Dear students, this is Salim Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Bharat Institute of Law, Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research. In this video session, I will be explaining you about the topic when facts otherwise not relevant become relevant. This is a topic that is dealt under Section 11 of Indian Evidence Act. See, the Section 11 commences with the wording fact otherwise relevant are relevant. It means to convey that facts, although they are strictly legally relevant, but acquire relevancy by virtue of their connection with the existence or non-existence of other facts and become provable. See, under this section, facts that can be proved are: first is facts which are inconsistent with any fact in issue or relevant fact. Second is fact which by themselves or in connection with other facts make the existence or non-existence of any fact in issue or relevant fact highly probable or improbable. But every fact which has some remote bearing upon the fact in issue cannot be proved, otherwise the very purpose of the theory of relevancy would be defeated. In order to make facts admissible under this section, they must be shown to have a proximate connection with the fact in issue or relevant fact. So, inconsistent facts means, see, the evidence can be adduced of those facts which have no connection with the main facts except that they are inconsistent with a fact in issue or relevant fact. The inconsistent with main facts of the case is the basis of the relevancy. See, under an illustration that is provided under this section itself, that the question is whether A committed a crime at Calcutta on a certain day. The fact that on that day he was at Lahore is relevant. The fact that near the time when the crime was committed, A was at distant place from the place where the crime was committed is inconsistent with the fact in issue that A committed the crime. Also, the fact renders the fact in issue that he committed the crime highly probable through not impossible. Highly improbable, though not impossible, that he committed it is relevant. The useful logic of the argument from the essential inconsistency is that certain facts cannot coexist with the doing of the act in question, and therefore if the fact is true of a person of whom the act is alleged, it is impossible that he should have done the act. Professor Wigmore cites 5 common cases falling under the line of this argument. The absence of the person charged is in another place. This is said to be called as alibi. Second is the absence of the husband when child was begotten. That is, this is said to be called as non-access. Third is survival of an alleged deceased person after supposed time of death. Fourth is the commission of crime by a third person. Fifth is self-infliction of the harm alleged. Now let us discuss about the concept of alibi. See, the alibi is a Latin term which means elsewhere. It is used when the accused take the plea that when the occurrence took place, he was elsewhere. In such situation, the prosecution has to discharge the burden of proof satisfactorily. Once the prosecution is successful in discharging the burden, it is incumbent on the accused who takes the plea of alibi to prove it with absolute certainty. And alibi is not an exception envisaged in Indian Penal Code or any other law. It is the rule of evidence recognized under Section 11 of Indian Evidence Act that facts inconsistent with fact in issue are relevant. However, it cannot be a sole link or sole circumstances to bear conviction. When one fact is necessary to the hypothesis of the guilt of the accused, but strikingly absent in the chain of circumstantial evidence, the prosecution's case certainly will fail, because an alibi, the relevancy of which is totally inconsistent with hypothesis that the accused had committed an offense. When the accused took the plea of alibi, the burden of proof lies on him under Section 103 of this Act. If the person is charged with murder, he is to prove that he was elsewhere. The plea of alibi was taken at the earliest opportunity, and it has to be proved to the satisfaction of the court. Where the alleged offense has been committed and the prosecution accuses a person of having committed the same, it would be a complete answer to the accusation of that person to plead that he was at that time elsewhere. That is, at the time of commission of offense, he is not present at the scene. He was not in the crime scene. The accused, the pleading of accused that he was not present at the time and he was elsewhere is totally relevant. This has, of course, no reference to the offense, in which time or place are not material factors. And if that person succeeds in establishing that plea, technically called the plea of alibi, he will be entitled to an acquittal. The reason is that what may appear on examination of defense evidence alone to be proved may turn out really not to be so, viewed in the light of evidence to the contrary adduced by the prosecution. In order to raise the plea of alibi, so in order for a plea of alibi to be effective, it is always wise to make the plea at the earliest possible time, in the initial stage of the case. That is, in the initial stage of the case. This stage could be at the stage of framing of charges or preliminary hearing. However, in some jurisdiction, there may be requirement that accused disclosed a defense prior to the trial. On the contrary, jurists in other jurisdiction have held an opinion that the mandatory earlier disclosure of alibi is unfair, possibly even unconstitutional. So by this, we can just list out few essentials of plea of alibi. So in order to raise a plea of alibi, the following essentials has to be considered. That is, just I'm summarizing what I said earlier. That is, 1. A person taking plea of alibi must be the accused of an offense. So basically, he should be accused for such an offense where he is taking plea of alibi. Secondly, he must plead his presence elsewhere at the time of commission of alleged offense. So he has to plead that he is not present. He was not present at the time at the crime scene at the time of offense. And third is, it should be impossible for him to reach the place of occurrence at the time of commission of offense. Therefore, plea of alibi should cover the whole time of the alleged offense. So basically, it should be very far from the place of occurrence. The place where he takes the plea of alibi, that uh, when he says that he was elsewhere, he should prove that it is impossible for him to reach the place of occurrence. Next is the plea of alibi. As said earlier, the plea of alibi must be raised by the accused at the earliest possible time. Next is the burden of proof is always vests with the accused. So when he pleads for alibi, it is his duty to prove the alibi. It is his duty to prove that he is not present at the crime scene and he was elsewhere. So when an accused raises the plea of alibi, the burden of proof is on the accused to prove it that he was not at that place at the time of incident. This was held in Ramachandran versus State of Kerala. Now let me discuss about a few cases that are relevant for plea of alibi, where the accused charged with an offense of rape advanced the plea of alibi, stating that at the time of at that relevant time of the incident, of the rape incident, he was in the police custody, and the fact was supported by head constable. The plea of alibi is said to have been established. This was dealt in Sunil Kumar versus State of HP. See, by this case, you have to understand that even it is nearer, it is practically impossible for a person who is in police custody to commit rape at the set date or set time when he is in police custody. Hence, this case was accepted and the plea of alibi was totally established. The next case to discuss. So the next case is on discussion is in a murder case where the accused pleaded alibi, stating that at the time of attack on the deceased, they were in factory. While rejecting the plea of alibi, it was held that keeping in view the distance between the factory and the place of occurrence, which is nearly 5 kilometers, the possibility of the accused going to the factory after the occurrence could not be ruled out. This is dealt under Sunil Kumar. This was dealt under State of Haryana versus Shakuntala. By this case, that is by the State of Haryana versus Shakuntala case, it is very important to understand that the distance does not matter. It should be totally impossible for a person to reach the place of occurrence at the time of commission of the offense. This is very, very important, that the accused has to establish the plea of alibi, that it is he should also establish that he is elsewhere, and it is his duty to establish that it is totally impossible for him to reach the place of occurrence at the time of commission of the offense. Let me discuss a few more cases also. In state of Uttar Pradesh versus Sugar Sikh, the court held that it is well settled that the burden of substantiating the plea of alibi and making it reasonably probable lies on the person who sets it. Similarly, in Mukesh versus State of NCT of Delhi, the plea taken by an accused person was that he was attending a musical program at the park with his family at the time of the incident. The plea of alibi contradicted the evidence of injured informant dying declaration of the victim. DNA analysis and fingerprint analysis evidence of authorities of the park revealed that no permission was granted by any authority for a musical program, and no such was held on the date of the incident. The plea of alibi was held to be rightly rejected. In another case, that is Govinda versus State of Madhya Pradesh, in this case, court held that the fact that accused advanced a false plea of alibi cannot itself be a proof of that fact that he was responsible for the offense. In another case, that is in Munshi Prasad and in Munshi Prasad and others versus State of Bihar, it was held that the presence of the accused at a distance of 400 to 500 yards between place of occurrence cannot be said to be present elsewhere. It cannot be impossibility for the place of occurrence to be at the place of occurrence and also at Panchayat meeting. In Vijaypal versus State, the Supreme Court held that the burden of proof on the accused is rather heavy and he is required to establish the plea of alibi in certitude. The plea can succeed only if it is shown that the accused was so far away at the relevant time and he could not be present at the time where the crime was committed. In Brijilal Prasad Sinha versus State of Bihar, the police official were tried for murder of some alleged culprits in encounter. It was alleged that the occupants of the vehicle used by deceased were also fired from their firearms, but the ballistic report showed that the pistol was found near the dead body, from which the deceased was alleged to have fired, were never used, and also that those arms were defective. Thus, the allegation that the deceased had fired from the pistol and the ballistic report that the pistol were never used and was defective were held inconsistent fact. Thus, the ballistic report was admissible under this section. In Lakshan Singh alias Pappu versus the state of NCT of Delhi, the plea of alibi, it was held that the plea of alibi cannot be equated with plea of self-defense and ought to be taken at the first instance and not belatedly at the stage of defense evidence. In any case, the appellant or accused gives no reason or explanation for not taking this plea of alibi at the earliest stage. In Binay Kumar Singh versus State of Bihar, we must bear in mind that alibi is not an exception or either it is a special exception or general exception envisaged in Indian Penal Code or any other law. It is only a rule of evidence recognized in Section 11 of Indian Evidence Act that facts which are inconsistent with fact in issue are relevant. In Dudnath Pandey case, the plea of alibi was explained by Apex Court as the plea of alibi states that the physical impossibility of the presence of the accused at the time of crime scene at the crime scene by the reason of his presence at another place. The plea can therefore succeed provided that it is shown that the accused was to date away, that he couldn't be present at the place where the alleged crime was committed. Now, you may have a question that is alibi a best defense or not? The purpose of alibi isn't to determine or prove anything but merely to boost a doubt within the mind of the judge that accused wasn't present at the crime scene. If the plea was made at initial proceeding accompanied with strong and independent evidences, then there are more chances of acquittal or discharge of accused. Circumstantial evidence to determine alibi does not guarantee its acknowledgement by the court. The plea of alibi isn't affirmative defense within the sense The plea of alibi isn't affirmative defense within the sense that it is an assertion to boost an inexpensive doubt on whether the accused is really a wrongdoer. In another case, that is in Munshi Prasad and in Munshi Prasad and others versus State of Bihar, it was held that the presence of the accused at a distance of 400 to 500 yards between place of occurrence cannot be said to be present elsewhere. It cannot be impossibility for the place of occurrence to be at the place of occurrence and also at Panchayat meeting. In Vijaypal versus State, the Supreme Court held that the burden of proof on the accused is rather heavy and he is required to establish the plea of alibi in certitude. The plea can succeed only if it is shown that the accused was so far away at the relevant time and he could not be present at the time where the crime was committed. In Brijilal Prasad Sinha versus State of Bihar, the police official were tried for murder of some alleged culprits in encounter. It was alleged that the occupants of the vehicle used by deceased were also fired from their firearms, but the ballistic report showed that the pistol was found near the dead body, from which the deceased was alleged to have fired, were never used, and also that those arms were defective. Thus, the allegation that the deceased had fired from the pistol and the ballistic report that the pistol were never used and was defective were held inconsistent fact. Thus, the ballistic report was admissible under this section. Now, we'll discuss about non-access. See, the establishment of paternity under both civil and criminal law is extremely important. The law presumes that the legitimacy of a child born during the validity of marriage as conclusive. The only exception under the law is non-access between the parties. This non-access refers to the non-existence of opportunity for sexual intercourse. This creates a legal lacuna with respect to the cases where the paternity may be disputed even when the parties had access to each other. For example, in the case of adultery. In such case, due to the standard of conclusive proof, a party with a legitimate case trying to dispute paternity will find themselves without remedy due to the inability to produce evidence. The exception to this law is that is non-access is not wide enough to cover all possible situations under the ambit of this law. Thus, law is a draconian law. The law is a draconian law based on the morality with no relevance with modern era. So basically, if a person is alleged to have been died, see, this is very common in many movies and cinemas. We used to see this, right? The person will be as alleged as dead. Suddenly, one day he will be appearing. In the same manner, this section 11 also agrees that these two are inconsistent fact. Only one can subsist. Okay, so the first one is a person is dead on say for instance on it is alleged in FIR that a person is dead on 1st July 2000. Okay, subsequently there is a concrete evidence to prove that the person is alive on 1st January 2021. See, this is these two both concept are totally contradictory with each other. Okay, so here this fact is inconsistent with other fact, hence it is relevant. So the commission of crime by third party, where the question is whether A committed the murder of B by causing injuries. The fact that A was killed by C by inflicting injuries is relevant as it is inconsistent with the fact in issue that A committed the murder of B of by causing injuries. See, if it is proved that C has killed B, then the question whether A committed murder of B is totally inconsistent. So, in case the commission of crime by third party is established, then the fact is inconsistent and it is allowed to be established. And next is self-inflicted harm, where the question is whether A committed the murder of B by administering poison. The fact that B committed a suicide by consuming poison is relevant as it is inconsistent with the fact in issue and that fact in issue that A administered poison to B. So when there is a question that whether A has committed murder of B by administering poison, when it is proved that B himself committed suicide by taking consuming poison is totally relevant as these two facts are totally inconsistent with each other. Next, we'll discuss about facts showing probabilities. Evidence can be adduced of every fact which by itself or in connection with other fact make the existence or non-existence of any fact in issue or relevant fact highly probable or improbable. In cases where it is not possible to prove certain facts by means of direct evidence, the court has to be guided by the probabilities of the situation. For example, under illustration B, the question is whether A committed a crime. The circumstances are such that crime must have been committed either by A, B, C, or D. Every fact which shows that the crime could have been committed by anyone else and that it is not committed by either B, C, or D is relevant. Evidence of these circumstances makes the fact in issue that A committed the crime highly probable. In Santa Singh vs. State of Punjab, the witness testified that they have seen the deceased being shot at from the distance of 25 feet. The medical opinion indicated that the nature of wound was that it could have been caused only from a distance of less than a yard. The expert opinion has here rendered the testimony of the witness highly improbable. Similarly, in state of Madhya Pradesh versus Surban, the eyewitness testified that the accused hit the deceased from behind only once, whereas the medical evidence clearly indicated that 3 separate incised wounds were inflicted upon the deceased. The medical expert opinion rendered the testimony of eyewitness highly improbable. In the case relating to serial bomb blast in local train of Mumbai suburban railway, where a confession made by the accused in different case accepting the culpability of the blast was sought to be proved. The Supreme Court held that admissibility of evidence of such confession renders prosecution case highly improbable. Thank you so much for listening my lecture.